Welcome everyone to the second episode of IGNITE's Conversations. My name is Shen Ming, and together with Ilva, Gustavo, Neo, my co-founders of IGNITE, who are here as well, we thank you for joining us today. In this 3-episode series, we have invited guests from various organizations in the Olympic and Paralympic movement to provide their insights and to discuss how the current pandemic and postponement of the Tokyo 2020 Games has impacted their professional and organizational plans. We hope in this series to reach out through time and space to each other, continuing to pool our knowledge and best practices so as to strengthen our connections and enhance our vision and actions, as well as to foster resilience for the days to come. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Peter Brull, Sports Director for the European Olympic Committees, and Jerry Ling, Chief of Staff, World Taekwondo. Peter joined the European Olympic Committees in May 2019, following a decade as Games Operations Manager at the Finnish Olympic Committee. Prior to this, Peter was the Secretary General of the Slovak Ski Association and Sport Manager at the Slovak Olympic Committee. He has vast knowledge of and in-depth experience at the Olympic Games, Youth Olympic Games, European Games, and European Youth Olympic Festivals, amongst others. He has attended 6 Olympic Games, 5 Youth Olympic Games as a chef de mission or deputy chef de mission, as well as 15 European Youth Olympic Festivals and 2 European Games. Peter walks the talk, serving not only as a leader in his professional role, but as an active volunteer. And we all know that volunteers are vital to the functioning and success of any sporting event. As a sportsman, Peter practices many sports and took part in the Winter World Swimming Championships, which is as cold as it sounds. He reached and then competed in the B finals for his category. And in fact, one of the last times I met Peter, he was sprinting up all 936 steps of a ski jumping hill for fun. Jerry began his sports career in World Taekwondo in 2004 in the fields of international relations and anti-doping. One of the highlights of his work during this time was his role as Olympic coordinator at the Beijing 2008 Olympic Games. In 2009, he decided to make a change and was hired to be the Director of International Liaison for the Daegu 2011 IAAF World Championships. He then went on to work for the Pyeongchang Organizing Committee for the 2018 Olympic and Paralympic Winter Games, first as head of Games Planning and then as Director for Sport Services. Through the successes of both major events, he received the Sports Merit Awards from 2 presidents of the Republic of Korea. He is now back in World Taekwondo, first as Director of Strategic Planning and now Chief of Staff. He is also a board member of the newly established Global Esports Federation. Last week, Andrew and Melina shared with us the wisdom and best practices that existed in their tradition and systems prior to this pandemic, and best practices that extend beyond this pandemic. They address the complex and sometimes bleak reality of the situation in the massive task ahead of coordination and teamwork. They define their vision for the future and the realistic actions towards it. They spoke also of the importance of a bedrock of hope that is clearly founded on reality. And this calls to mind a quote from Admiral Stockdale: "You must never confuse faith that you will prevail in the end, which you can never afford to lose, with the discipline to confront the most brutal facts of your current reality, whatever they might be." This week, let us hear from the perspective of an international federation and a continental association. Jerry, Peter, what were your first thoughts when COVID-19 became a worldwide pandemic? Peter, can you start us off?
As our office is in Italy, and Italy was the first country that was really strongly hit, we maybe saw the reality for other European countries. We were in a time that our friends from other European countries were asking us, how are we doing? Is everything okay? And Italy was already putting a lot of restrictions, whereas in many other European countries, life was still normal and everything was totally normal, and the only flights canceled were flights between Italy and other countries in Europe. So we saw it pretty soon, but I think nobody at that moment expected that how the situation will become very quickly all over Europe and all over the world. Yeah, it was difficult to or it was impossible to plan and to prepare ourselves for something like that, because things were changing really quickly. Every day we heard news from different countries, and everything was changing really rapidly.
Thank you, Peter. And what about for you, Jerry?
Yeah, well, actually, as you know, in Asia, it kind of started over from China. And because we are next to China, we were also very severely hit in South Korea. And there was a point where we were actually the second rank, so to speak, among other countries that had this COVID-19. So this was a really very difficult and unfortunate times for our people, but it did really impact us in terms of our championships and the hosting of events.
Peter, could you speak with us about the impact on your plans and activities at the EOC?
So I would say the first activities that we had that we needed to postpone or cancel were different coordination commission visits to future organizers of UIOF. We had visits planned for March, for April. There was a European Evening of Sport planned in Brussels by our EU office. And for example, there was a coordination commission visit planned to Vuokatti in Finland in middle of March. And middle of the week, in the beginning of the week, we were still planning to start our visit on Sunday, normally as scheduled. And then slowly from different countries, from the different members of the committee, we're getting messages of the restrictions they are having. But actually in Finland, everything was basically normal with no restrictions still on Thursday. And suddenly on Friday, we had to cancel everything. So and from there, almost on a daily basis, we had to cancel or postpone our events. Also, our seminar that was supposed to be organized in May. As situation was evolving, events that were later, we needed to postpone. And as soon as we heard the new dates for Tokyo, of course, we realized that at the same time with summer EYOF next year. So there was another event that we are now planning for the new dates and making a new plans.
I would say that from our side in World Taekwondo, actually in the first 6 months, we are supposed to have the continental level events. And then in the second half of the year, we are supposed to have World Taekwondo events. That's usually how we schedule our tournaments. And from the end of February to sometime around mid-April, we were supposed to finish our Olympic and Paralympic qualification tournaments. So what happened was we have finished 3 of them, but we could not do the Asian and European ones. In fact, this past week, we were supposed to finish Asia, and next week, we were supposed to start European qualification tournaments. On top of that, in May, we were supposed to have the World Pumse Taekwondo Championships, but even that was, it was cancelled totally because we realized that we could not do it. And now all our events that are recognized or promoted by us have either been postponed, but I would say probably almost all have been cancelled at this point. We hope to see some kind of progress in terms of hosting of events in the second half or maybe in the final quarter of the year, but because that's when we have our World Junior Championships in October, but we'll see. We need to monitor the situation for the safety and health of our athletes.
So we're looking at quite a lot of uncertainty as to how things will move forward, especially for events then in general, I think across the board for both the EOC and for World Taekwondo as well. And it sounds incredibly complex. And it's also looking almost like a daily briefing or daily changes and evolution as well to what you are doing on both sides. If we could look a little bit at your initiatives as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. Now, I know that the EOC has been incredibly active and has initiated a project in collaboration with European management consulting firm Methodos Group, with the aim of getting a clear picture of current operations at each of the 50 European NOCs during this pandemic. And the EOC has shared that this is to better understand the needs of European NOCs during the times of crisis and to determine how and where it can provide assistance. Peter, could you tell us a little bit more about this project and how the EOC will use this information, perhaps not only in relation to this pandemic, but for the future as well?
Yes, you're right, Ming, and we try to do everything possible to help our members, the European National Olympic Committees, in this difficult situation. NOCs were asking us, okay, do you have the information of on what other countries, other NOCs in Europe are doing? What are the impacts on their athletes, on their preparations for Tokyo? That was the basis for creating the questionnaire that we have sent to all 50 European NOCs, asking them about the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on their NOC operations, on their athletes, on the preparations for Tokyo Olympics, on different practices, on what their governmental institutions are doing, on what would help them from our side, what would they like to share with other NOCs. We got actually a really good response rate. 46 out of 50 NOCs responded to the questionnaire. There were also some questions on what they expect from us in the future, and that they like more initiatives to be online and to organize the webinars and to make questionnaires like this. And definitely after we will analyze data and the answers of different NOCs, we will share the best practices among all the NOCs in Europe. And we hope that they will maybe get some ideas what they can do in their own countries, how they can collaborate with other institutions in their countries, and ultimately it will help their athletes in preparations for future events.
Thank you. It sounds as if even despite what we see as distancing and a lot of isolation, or a sense of isolation in many parts of the world, the EOC and many organizations like the EOC are basically fostering cooperation and actually pulling people together while pulling resources and pulling knowledge. And this is incredibly heartening. Jerry, how is the World Taekwondo engaging your member nations, your athletes and other stakeholders to monitor their continued progress, especially for athletes training, their well-being, both mentally and physically, and especially since you also mentioned that we have had competitions that are suspended and the huge impact on athletes who have been waiting to peak at specific times and so forth?
Yeah, it's been incredibly difficult in that sense because a lot of our athletes actually not only rely on the competitions to compete for ranking points, but it's also a source of income for them. So in this regard, they have been severely impacted. So the first thing when they heard about the news and about cancellation of events, postponement of events, was actually they felt anguish and depression to a certain extent. So we try to use social media to engage with the athletes, for instance. So we have a campaign called Kicking It at Home. So basically they have to send in their videos of how they're training at home, because a lot of them have no access to gyms, to other places, although some of them have inbuilt gyms in their homes. And through this campaign, not only do we sort of try to encourage them to have fun, but also at the end of the year, we have our gala. And this is something which we are thinking of using these online videos to rate who has the best kicks, for instance, and to make it into a gala kick of the year, which we usually have, but this time through the online videos. And also we are reaching out to our athletes committee to see what ideas they have to try to encourage our members. For the member associations and other stakeholders, we are actually now developing a lot of online education. We have our global membership system, which we have access to the database of all our athletes, coaches, and officials. So recently we launched our online education program and the system itself. So we hope that over the next few months, we can use this online system to make them more positive and also to enrich them. So using this platform as well, we are now reaching out to external partners to see whether we can include their information, their materials for them to share with our members. So these are the various activities that we are engaging with them.
I think that World Taekwondo is incredibly technologically savvy in many ways, and we're going to address a little bit more about that. But first, a question to Peter. Last week, we spoke about how our world has changed as a natural part of the trajectory of our intentions to progress, and as well as a result of the pandemic. So we are seeing changes such as what Jerry has mentioned, launching of an online education program, and Peter also mentioning the launching of different initiatives and different ways of outreach. We spoke about the creative use of solutions and the use of technology for connecting people and improving our current systems and processes. The EOC has celebrated the International Day of Sports for Development and Peace through a digital campaign to highlight that same solidarity and inclusion. Can you speak to us about what creative solutions and methods, what other creative solutions and methods the EOC is utilizing to continue its projects and its outreach, and what plans have you initiated even before the pandemic? And perhaps if you could speak about what other opportunities you are looking at in the face of this pandemic.
On the initiative that you mentioned on peace and sport, we collaborate a lot with the organization, and this was a good way to work on a different solutions and use of digital media in our work. We cooperate also with our athletes commission, and they were very much involved in this initiative and using our social media channels, our athletes commission members trying to reach other athletes around Europe, spread important messages of Olympism. And we definitely already before the pandemic, we are more and more using social media, using different channels to reach our members, to reach young athletes and elite athletes all around Europe. We definitely, this situation strengthened the need for using these methods more and more. For the near future, we are planning also to arrange some webinars on different topics with our members. And this was actually one of the answers or one of the feedback that we got from the questionnaire that we have sent to the NLCs, that the majority of them wishes for us to organize this webinar and to be more involved with them and to be more in touch with them via different digital platforms. There were also some ideas of organizing part of our seminar online in this situation and so on. So definitely we will explore the situation more. We are discussing, for example, with the future EYOF organizers, if there is there should be Chef de Mission seminar in November in Vocati for the winter EYOF. What if there isn't a possibility to travel yet in November, to plan different possibilities, to have maybe virtual Chef de Mission seminar organized online with different NOCs if the situation with the pandemic continues.
Thank you. It sounds like there is an interesting precedent then for a lot of the meetings that we have, continental, whether it's CDM seminars or otherwise, and looking at how these can become virtual, and also possible cost-saving measures all around the world for sporting bodies and for NOCs and individuals as well. Jerry, much has been said about esports as a possible and additional avenue for sport in general, and you yourself are involved in this, and this has been addressed as a means of outreach to our younger audiences, whether it's through interesting elements such as the creation of avatars or the opportunities for building relatability for our younger audiences. And we're also looking at it as a way of overcoming physical distances, and also as a means of subverting some factors such as weight classes or gender, say, for example, in combat sport. Last year at the World Taekwondo Championships, World Taekwondo showcased a virtual sparring match between a female athlete from Korea and Olympian Pascal Gentil via a first-person interactive game. During this match, both athletes had to kick and punch, but their activities were connected on the virtual platform, which allowed this, what you would never normally see in competition, where you have a female athlete competing directly with a male athlete. Can you share with us more about this, and particularly in moving forward, what are the possibilities of active esport for high-level competition, and what are the challenges? In particular, what are World Taekwondo's visions and hope for this?
Yes, indeed. Actually, I would like to add on to what you have just said. In that match in Manchester, actually the female athlete won against our two-time Olympian. So that really shows that esports has a bright future. What I can say here is that it is indeed the future, especially considering what's happening right now. So as we all know that the global competitions are all kind of being cancelled or postponed. And actually there was this interesting report from McKinsey and company that shows that, for instance, in China, there's been like 15% to 20% of increase in online penetration. So in this particular case, esports, we used to say is the future, but actually I would say that it's now. Is the current, is the present. So with this World Taekwondo is actually having a 2 to 3 app kind of a concept where our application one is more of an online Pumse education. So for those who are unfamiliar, in Taekwondo you have what we call the movement, which is Pumse, and you have the competition side, which is Kyorugi. So Kyorugi obviously is impacted now because of this cancellation of events, but through the online sparring, creation of avatars, and also this body sensor movements, as Ming you just mentioned, we can have not only men against women, but Kyorugi athletes against para taekwondo athletes. We can have even online Nations Cup, so to speak. And for information as well, we are now developing plans to involve families. So as you know, there's a lot of families who are also impacted. So what we have still as a concept, but the concept is to create online Pumse championships where we have family events, friendly competitions with other families around the world, where, for instance, a dad, a mom, and a child will practice together some moves as a requirement, and then we will have some examiners who online will rate who is a better family, and we can go by a round robin way. So in a sense, it's a virtual kind of competition. We understand that such initiatives cannot replace the actual competitions. You cannot replace hard work of the hard sweat and the actual feeling of a punch, or kick. But considering the situation, this is, we think, what we can do at best for now.
Thank you, Jerry. As we speak about these developments, let's also continue to speak about this positive nature of sport and why all of us are here today, in fact, how it provides us with stability in times of uncertainty and how it helps us to develop these universal skills that brings us together. Peter, 2021 marks the 30th anniversary of the European Youth Olympic Festival. For many young athletes, it will be their first multi-sport event. And in fact, to date, there have been 36 athletes who won gold in the EYOF. They continued growing as athletes and then won gold in the Olympic Games as well. This includes the medaled Yevgeny Plushenko, Laura Dalmayer, Pieter van den Hoogenband, Ilya Viviani, amongst many other athletes. Could you speak to us about the EYOF next year and what these events will bring to us as we move forward and as the world heals? And particularly, you did also mention how you're looking at an impact on the dates of the EYOF.
Yes, EYOF is a really important event for us. Next year will be the 30th anniversary. So the first summer EYOF was organized in 1991. It's a very well established event, and when speaking with the European NOCs, it's a really important event for them and for their young athletes, and really for many young athletes. It's the first major international sport event. For next year, there were two EYOFs planned. The winter one in Vuokatti, Finland. Actually, Vuokatti shall become the first town organizing EYOF twice. They have organized winter EYOF in 2001. And summer EYOF in Banská Bystrica in Slovakia. Now, as I said already, because of rescheduling or postponement of Tokyo Olympics and the direct clash of the dates with the original dates planned for EYOF, we're also forced to postpone summer EYOF. We will have the new date soon. As right now we are in discussions with the European federations that are on the program of this EYOF and with our members, and especially with the organizing NOC and with the organizing committee to see and to find out the possible solutions. Concerning the winter EYOF, right now everything is going as planned, as scheduled. It should take place in the second week of February. We think 40 European NOCs, after Tokyo has been rescheduled, this Vuokatti EYOF will be actually first big event, first multi-sport event after the lockdown. So this will be the first event where all the NOCs will meet, the members of staff of different NOCs in Europe, the athletes will meet our old friends that we haven't been able to visit for a long time in person. And let's hope if everything goes well, this will add another really important aspect to this event, and it will be something to strengthen the role of sport and the role of friendship in Europe, and something that we believe will be important for the European NOCs. So let's keep our fingers crossed and hope everything goes well. And we are in daily contact with the organizing committee and really trying to help them with overcoming all the obstacles that the current situation may cause in preparations for the UIF.
Thank you. Indeed, we hope that it will be a huge reunion and celebration, as you said, strengthening the role of sport and of friendship in Europe. Jerry, Taekwondo is to be featured for the very first time in the Paralympics next year. So continuing on these lines of inclusion and connection, the values of the Paralympics are courage, determination, inspiration, and equality. And these are all values that speak strongly to us in these challenging times. What challenges did World Taekwondo face for Taekwondo to be included in the Paralympic program?
Yes, we are supposed to make our debut in Tokyo, and actually Para Taekwondo started back in 2006. At that time, as you said, we were thinking about inclusion, and this is very much our values, our vision, and also what we call peace is more precious than triumph. This is actually our president's motto, which we have instilled as a mandate. So I believe in 2013 and 14, we made our applications to the IPC to have Para Taekwondo included in the Paralympic Games in Tokyo. And in early January 2017, the IPC General Assembly accepted the World Taekwondo proposal. That was how we were included into the sport program for the Paralympic Games. One of the key things here is that actually, again, we have Pomse and we have Kyorugi also in the Para Taekwondo aspect. But specifically for Kyorugi, we not only have weight categories, so there's 3 weight categories per gender, but we also have classification. So whether they are physically impaired or whether they are deaf. So these are the various classifications that we have. So in that sense, our director of Para Taekwondo in the Lausanne office has been working very hard with IPC over the past few years to have Taekwondo included. But at the same time, I think this is something which I wish to mention as well, which you have actually said it in a very good way. They display values of Taekwondo, which is very much what we need in this world right now. And at the same time, this is what Taekwondo is about. And likewise, previously with esports, where we want to have as much inclusion as possible. Likewise for Para Taekwondo as well, it is not only for athletes with disabilities or people to inspire people with disabilities, but also to inspire the military with personnel with disabilities who got injured during the war or during training, and also to the refugees. So as a further next step, we are in contact with, for instance, CISM to organize not only what we call so-called able-bodied and Para Taekwondo athletes together as a mixed team, but also within the mixed team, male and female gender parity. So it's going to be a very interesting mix. Mixed team is really something that we already have successfully tried out over the past few years for Kyorugi, and now we are going to include in Para as well, and eventually a fully inclusive discipline of so-called able-bodied, Para Taekwondo, and male and female. So those are, in a sense, exciting times ahead.
Wow, this is absolutely fascinating. But actually, out of curiosity, how did World Taekwondo decide on the disciplines and categories to be featured in the Paralympics? Because it sounds like there are lots of intricacies as well to consider.
Yes, indeed, there's a lot of intricacies. And the first thing is we always went through our technical commission. So the technical commission is the one that details all the technical aspects. However, they might not have the expertise of the Para Taekwondo athletes. So this is where we engaged with experts around the world as a committee for Para Taekwondo. And we also engaged with some of the top classifiers around the world for this classification committee. So in a sense, it's like a very much a group effort. And from there, what happened was we came up with the categories, and again, this thanks to the director in charge in Lausanne office. After that, we communicated with IPC and we agreed on these disciplines and the categories, weight categories, and also the classification classes, the K classes, so to speak. So I would say it's a collaborative effort in a sense.
Continuing to speak about how our world is changing and how our world has changed with COVID-19 and the uncertainties it brings, but also just as the world changes, what with change being the only constant, how do you think that sports and the sporting world will be further affected? And how do you anticipate this might influence our sporting world in the future? Both of you have already touched on different points, whether it's the focus or the emphasis on using very different and creative solutions that might also impact how we run things in the future. Peter, perhaps you could start?
Well, we definitely see already now that there is an impact on our world, on the world of sport as well. Everything's changing. Of course, there are short-term impacts that we see right now and all the restrictions that we have right now. And impossible to predict how long they will last. Each of us hopes that it will last as short time as possible, and we'll be getting back to normal, whatever the normal will be after this. So definitely we'll have also some long-term impact. And one is, of course, as we talked already about different ways of doing things, different ideas that maybe even the situation help us to think of and help us to create and do things better. However, I think the sport has such a strong role in the lives of so many people, and it's a passion, it's a way of life. So at some point we are really will definitely be getting back to normal, and international events, people will like to meet to see the events, to practice sports. Everything will continue. However, maybe in a better way. We'll learn, I think, the situation to appreciate each other more, to appreciate other people's work and their efforts, and I think in future in the planning of let's say if we talk about sport events or even if training of the athletes, there will always be a certain doubt of or thought. Okay, what if something like this will happen again? So maybe it will help us to prepare ourselves better and to think of all different plans, all scenarios that we haven't thought of before.
Thank you, Peter. And what about you, Jerry?
Well, I think that definitely the world is evolving in a sense that, at least from what I can see here in Korea, and also with my family in Singapore, it seems like the common citizen is very much more aware of medical issues now, or very more interested to find out more about what the virus is, and also changing our lifestyles to ensure that we protect ourselves. And in that sense, it also very much is impacted by the information on the media. And also from the media side, we are all becoming more responsible in a sense to be accountable, not only for the individual, but also for the government. So in that sense, I would say that at least from a private perspective, accountability in that sense and awareness has increased quite dramatically. At the same time, also we look at sports, for instance, and then we go, okay, so sports in the traditional sense might not be the model anymore. We have to look at sustainability as well, because now obviously travels around the world have dropped by around 44%. And do we really need to host events, or can we do it online, or can we do it through some kind of virtual angle? And if you look at sports like FIS, for instance, they already have their own virtual races. Motorsports as well have virtual races. Taekwondo now is having this sparring and online education. Eventually, we have to look at the world and go, okay, what is sports in general? And also the outreach to the citizens, to people, is now maybe is in a sense, maybe this is the wrong choice of words, but in a sense it's a blessing in disguise, in the sense that families and the individuals are now, instead of looking at esports or instead of looking at gaming as something which is only using your fingers, now we literally have to evolve esports into a physical exercise through technology. So maybe in that sense, it is a way to look at our future and go, if we cannot do it physically in a venue on the mat, it doesn't mean that we don't do exercise at all, but now we move on to the online platform. And We can do virtual sparrings around the world. So in a way, it's making our world more connected, but also making our world smaller. So I would say these are the things that are kind of impacting. But eventually, and I know we have to look at governments as well and go, instead of spending millions and millions of dollars on projects that might not be sustainable or that might not have impact, maybe they can now look into this, look at their own expenses, look at their own investments and go, how can I make the world better through such investments and in a more sustainable way? That's at least my perspective. So hopefully, whatever the result, whatever the outcome, it will be for the better of the society.
Thank you very much for both of your insights and thoughts. At this point, we're going to take a look at a few questions from our audience, and I apologize in advance if we're not able to answer all questions during this time. Andrea McQuarrie and Steve Scott from the EOC European Games Liaison Office would like to ask about your concerns about less funding in sport and your organizations. Jerry, perhaps you could start us off?
Yes, in a sense, I suppose when you say less funding, it means less revenue, for instance, from competitions, at least from our end. Yes, indeed, there's impact. And also with the postponement of the Olympic Games, also this is causing some kind of uncertainty. But we are speaking with the IOC on this, so we hope to have positive results. But at the same time, from our perspective, yes, indeed, there'll be less funding, but hopefully the funding that we have can be channeled more effectively. So I wouldn't say that maybe we need to, for instance, for World Taekwondo, we have revisited all our budgets and our operational plans for this year. And we have made 3 reviews and made 3 budget cuts, so to speak. Less funding, yes, but investing into more appropriate or more meaningful projects, I would say that's our priority. But ultimately, what our concern is for the athletes, because a lot of our athletes rely on competitions, as I said earlier, competitions for revenue, for living. So how to find partnerships, example, through online options or online opportunities, that is one way, or maybe through online education courses, that is one way where we are looking at. Eventually, though, nothing beats going, at least from my point of view, nothing beats going back to the traditional model of sponsorships. So hopefully there could be some kind of normal in that sense. So I'm not sure whether I answered the question, but at least for World Taekwondo, this is the way that we are looking at.
So you're looking at a rechanneling of your funding, a re-looking at how you're currently using the limited resources that you have, considering the economic impact that has already occurred and that will continue to occur probably over time. And you're also concerned about your athletes, and you're looking at how you can support your athletes who depend on the income from competitions and the like. But ultimately, you're also sharing that the sponsorship model has been successful previously, and you think that that's something that will probably, hopefully, come back at some point.
Yeah, I think you said it much better than I did. So thanks for that.
I'm glad I understood correctly. Peter, what about on the side of the EOC? How are you looking at the economic impact?
We know for sure also by the answers on the questionnaire of our different NOCs, but in general, in the world of sport right now, we can see that the first and the most visible impact that we have, apart from canceling all the events all around the world, is the financial impact. And we see that many organizations, many sport clubs suddenly has no income and they have to cut on their operations. We also see many acts of solidarity. We see in many clubs players that voluntarily agree on the cut of their salaries by, let's say, 50%. We see many fans, many spectators buying tickets to the matches that are canceled, kind of to support their own clubs. We see actually sponsors of the clubs keeping or giving at least some part of their sponsorship money to the clubs, even in different leagues. However, we also have to understand that after the pandemic and when there is time to revive the economics, maybe the sport, especially the elite sport, will not be the top priority of the governments in different countries. So definitely there will be some cuts on the funding of the sport organizations in the future, and also maybe on the funding of organization of the sport events. That's one side of it. The other side, if you think about sport and especially healthy lifestyle, that's a game that can become even a more important priority for the governments and for different stakeholders, because we know the more healthy the population is, the smaller are the impacts of different diseases of a pandemic like this. So it definitely will have an impact. It has definitely really strong, let's say, short-term impact. But what it will do with the financing of the sport in the long term, I think it's too early to say.
Yeah, because we are looking at massive economic impact in general. So I guess that I guess it is true that it's really hard to see how this will basically have an impact then in sport as well. Peter, do you think that esports could be considered to be included in the future EYOFs perhaps, or the European Games? Is that something that's even a question on the board
well, for sure. I mean, we had already discussions about esports, and I mean, of course, we want to promote the traditional sports and the healthy lifestyle and people to get out and move, but esports is a phenomenon, is here. We know it's a fact, and I think the only thing is it's a very important industry, and we have to think of creative ways how to incorporate esports into our events in a way that we will promote the healthy lifestyle by including esports. So we'll get more awareness, we get more young people following our events. But the discussions are there. Nothing has been agreed on, but definitely in the future is something we need to think of. And yes, I think they could be included in one way or another.
Peter, I love that answer. Hopefully you can also engage with Taekwondo.
I think it's also brilliant that we are looking at more active forms of esport, and that could be something incredibly relevant to us in the future as far as inclusion is concerned, as far as opportunities for breaking the norm, so to speak, are concerned. Maybe just one more question for Peter. Peter, do you want a question about the EYOF, or would you like a question more personal?
Actually, the EYOF question is good. The question I read here from Neo, if it's the one that you want to ask, yeah, you can ask and I can ask.
So when you joined the EOC, one of your visions was to make the EYOF a qualification event for the Youth Olympic Games. Do you think with the rescheduling of next year's EYOF, is there a possibility for the EYOF to become a qualification event for Dakar 2022?
Yes, definitely. It's one of our concerning EYOF, that it's one of the priorities. It's one of the things to find the way how to cooperate, how to find the connections between different events, as YOG and EYOF are basically targeting the same age group in many sports, same athletes. We think that's the best possible way to link those two events, not to. I mean, some of the international federations have to organize separate qualification events for the YOG. Why not to have EYOF if the athletes are anyway participating in it, European athletes? Why not to have it as the European qualifying event for the YOG? We actually started the conversation and we already signed the agreements with some of the federations. The 2021, originally 21, EYOF will be or would have been the qualification event for Europe for Dakar 22. As the qualification period lasts also in summer of 22, and that's probably the date where the EYOF is going to be postponed to, I think it's not even that there is still a possibility, but I see it as a bigger possibility, because for some of the international federations, their answer was 2021 summer is still too early for qualification for Dakar, and we are targeting different age group. I spoke already, for example, with gymnastics, and as we know, if the event would be shifted by 1 year, it would give us better possibility to make it qualification event for Dakar. So I think definitely the answer is yes, and that's what we hope for in as many sports as possible.
That's fascinating. Thank you for giving us this insight. Well then, I think thank you for all the questions. Jerry, Peter, would you like to share a message of hope with our audience before I close the session?
Well, anyway, I want to thank you very much for the invitation, for this conversation, for this event. It was my pleasure to talk with you, to share the ideas, to hear the answers and ideas of Jerry and what World Taekwondo is doing. And we also hope we'll cooperate with them, and we will have Taekwondo included in our future events. And also on the esports, we can have some more talks and more words, and then we can try to do something together in the future. Yeah, I wish everybody to stay healthy, to stay strong, to continue planning our future events and planning the future in sport, and looking forward to be able to meet all of you also in person sometime, whenever that will be possible.
Same here. I echo Peter's words, and also thank Peter very much for the positive discussions and also for the future collaborations. For me, it's more of because we are based in Asia and we have seen how the pandemic has exploded and also seem to be showing signs of slowing down here, at least in Korea. So we definitely see that there's a lot of possibility to beat this, to overcome this challenge, this global challenge. But at the same time, for those who are based around the world, just stay home, stay active, stay safe. And as Peter said, we hope to see each other someday, because nothing beats meeting face to face and having a laugh together.
Thank you very much. So everyone, today Peter and Jerry have shared with us in a common theme the importance of connection, of establishing and fostering this, whether through creative means. It builds inclusion and it opens doors for dialogue. They have also shared with us that this time is an opportunity for improvement, a growth of our awareness and our accountability. It's an opportunity for reframing, and that through the reframing and through the growth of our awareness and accountability, we can mitigate the chaos with our clarity of vision and action. They have also shared that this is a great chance for us to celebrate humanity and our resilience. Although there is still uncertainty around us, and while the consequences and impact of our current circumstances continue to change and grow, friends, through the work that we do and through our day-to-day interactions, we can help to mitigate this chaos, as I mentioned earlier. And we can highlight the steps that we can take and help each other in finding the way forward. By firstly remaining calm ourselves and looking for these opportunities in the present in the way that Jerry, Peter, Andrew, and Melina have shared with us already. We can establish these very specific goals that are measurable, achievable, realistic, and timely. And we can thus help to create that direction by involving each other and building our collective efficacy and reminding each other of our existing strengths, so we can continue to create and build connections with each other, nurture hope, and nurture resilience. The world is changing, but let us change it for the better. So thank you once again to Jerry and Peter. You may follow Jerry and Peter and their respective organizations on the following handles, which we are going to post in the chat. And you may also continue to follow Ignites on our social media platforms, LinkedIn, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. And do also visit our YouTube channel, where you can see a recording of this session and the previous session in the coming days. Keep calm, everyone. Wash your hands. And until next week, everyone.